Hello, this is Kevin.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Someone needs to mute themselves. There's a lot of talking.
Yeah. So Lokesh, please mute everyone. That would help us.
Sure, I was going to do that. Thank you.
Lokesh, I guess you are also on mute. Hello.
All right, thank you. Yep, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, Lokesh.
All right, thank you. So let's give a couple of more minutes so we will have maximum participation. Okay, so before this meeting was started, there was some conversation. So can I know what was that about? Or is that around any root cause information? Okay. All right, so Deepa, hope you can hear me well. Do you hear any background sound from my side?
No, Lokesh. You sound good. There is no background noise.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen with everyone, which is showing the training presentation. Can everyone see this?
Yeah, we can see it, Lokesh.
Yes, Lokesh.
Thank you. So let's give a couple of more minutes.
So Lokesh, I would suggest you go into the presentation mode for the slide deck.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello guys, this is Rohit.
Hello, Rohit. Thank you for joining. So we just and I'm giving
Which there's a lot of feedback. I think someone has two devices that are logged in.
Is it better now?
Yes, Lokesh. I guess you have connected through mobile also. So I would request you to mute on any of your device because it is echoing.
Yep, thank you. I think it should be all set now.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Do we have Arpit on this call?
Not yet, I think, Lokesh. Arpit is trying to find the meeting details, and I'm forwarding them to Arpit.
May I know whom do we have from the Carousel team? Okay, I think I see Alan Camille.
Yes, hello?
Hello, Alan. Just want to confirm that you are from Carousel.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Okay, do you know if Ed or Derek have joined the call?
I don't know.
Okay, no problem.
Hey Logesh, Crystal's on from Cognizant. Just wanted to let you know I was here.
Thank you for joining, Crystal. I was going through the participant list and I could see your name, and I was glad to know that you were on the call. And I remember there are few people I work with Carousel team to get the RCS documented. So I was looking for Ed and Derek and Tim Pensioner and Arpit. Okay, so we have Alan from Carousel. I hope you can take the message to the forum. Okay, so we have 7 minutes past the actual time, so we can get started. I think we have a good forum to get started. So good morning, everyone, once again. So to set the context of today's agenda, I like to say that the agenda is going to be a kind of refresher training. I hope most of you are aware of what a root cause process is and what a problem is. So we can use this session as a kind of refresher training to better understand what is the setup or the policy we have in BCBSRA environment and the workflow that is configured in the ServiceNow system, and to better understand the timelines when the RCA documents have been submitted, etc. So that's the overall agenda, and we will give some time at the end of the meeting for you to come up with any questions you may have, so we can discuss in the forum. So let me get started. So I'm moving on to the slide number 2, which talks about the overall ITIL overview of the problem management process. So I like to begin with the definition of a problem. So a problem is called an underlying cause of one or more incidents for which we don't know the root cause yet. So it can be a result of an incident for which we need to do a deep dive investigation to find what caused the problem, and we have to fill in the gaps to address the problem. So that being said, we will move on to the problem management process as such. So the problem management process is actually a dedicated set of activities which focuses on finding a permanent solution by doing a deep dive investigation of all the factors that involved in resulting the incident. So the objective of the problem management should be such that we find the actual root cause that resulted in the business impact. We find proper workaround that can be implemented to immediately fix the problem, and we find the proper corrective and preventive actions to stop the problem from happening again. So those are the objectives of the problem management which are documented here. So put it in a nutshell, the overall objective should be that we are stopping business impacts, We are improving the productive use of resources, and we are also improving the availability of IT services, which is going to improve the end user experience. So that's the overall objective of the problem management. And I have put in a small a diagram on the right side to show the inputs and outputs of the process. So to talk about the inputs, the major input for a problem management process is a major or a critical incident. And there are also some of repeated incidents which can be causing a pain value. A pain, not necessarily a huge impact, but it can be sometimes annoying. So those recurring incidents have to be taken as an input, and the problem management process can help in finding a proper workaround and a permanent fix for that. So that's one of an input. And the other inputs can be like the CMDB information, like if a particular CI is throwing excessive alerts or not working expectedly. So we can also take that as a problem management input. And I have put in some of the outputs of the problem management process. As you can see, the output is going to be a problem record, which is going to contain all the necessary information for handling the problem, finding the root cause, and the corrective and preventive actions, which in turn is going to be implemented using the change tickets, which again follows a separate process of change management. So output is going to be focusing on implementing corrective actions through the change records, and we are going to have documented workaround knowledge articles. We are going to learn few things when we do the problem analysis. So those things are going to be documented in the knowledge articles and known error documentations, etc. And at times we will come to find out if there are any training that need to be imparted to the teams or the support teams who are involved. So one of the outcomes can be like a kind of training document or an updated standard operating procedure that can be helpful to put in a preventive measure or improve the handling of incidents or improving the service delivery in a more effective manner. So those are going to be the outputs of the problem management process. So in this slide, I put in some of the important points to note, which are involved in the problem management process. So the first point talks about the goal of the problem management. So the goal is to focus on long-term results. So what we do usually in an incident is, if somebody is reporting that the server is crashed, we will be trying to reboot the server and bring it up. But the problem management is something more, is going to do more deep dive investigation to make sure the server is not crashing again. So the focus is going to be on long-term results. It is not governed by any SLAs, just like the incident. So the problem management is more focused on finding the corrective actions or a workaround as quickly as possible, and make sure we find the precise root cause and publish the identified workaround as quickly as possible. So those are going to be the objectives and critical points for a problem management process. And there are some other points which I have put in there, like a problem management process need not be a time-bound exercise. However, it should focus on the quality of the root cause activities that is being performed. It can also involve a project being opened, which can call multiple team efforts. And I would say the problem ticket, which is created as a result of a critical incident, should be taking the top priority. So with that note, I'm moving on to the next slide, which talks about the different types of problem management process. So first, I'd like to talk a few things about reactive problem management. As I mentioned before, the goal for reactive problem management is to make sure we find the precise root cause, find out the patterns among the incidents and known errors, and narrow them down to the root cause. And I've also put in some of the sources that are triggered for reactive problem management. So in BCBSRE, the reactive problem ticket is created only for 3 situations which are mentioned there. The first one is going to be for a P1. For every P1, there is going to be a problem ticket created for BCBSRE. And the second situation is for any P2 incident that did not have a huge impact. However, if it qualifies for investigation and if BCBSRE requested, we will be taking that into consideration as well. And the third one can be a kind of an issue for which it is not widely spread, but it can be a kind of annoying factor for a business environment for which an escalation could have happened. So that is a third situation where a problem ticket will be created for BCBSRE. So moving on to the solutions for a reactive problem management. The possible solutions can be like a workaround, which is captured in a knowledge article, the changes that we make to fix an issue, or the hot fix or patches that we fix will be one of a solution. And like I mentioned, there are other solutions to fix a reactive problem management, like putting in an updated standard operating procedure or enhancing the monitoring that we already have in place. And sometimes there can be also training and communication that need to be implemented to make sure the right teams are involved in triaging a critical incident. And we have a standard set of documentation to refer whenever there is a P1 incident created in the environment. So those are the possible better solutions we can come out when we close a problem ticket. That's for a reactive problem ticket. And to mention few of the challenges, I like to call out the time and cost constraints can be a major challenge for fixing a reactive problem. And we can improve the process by responding to the RCA submissions on a timely manner and also providing effective response when we submit the RCA documents. So I like to emphasize here that the solution of a problem ticket depends on timely response as well as effective response by the investigation leads identified for the problem ticket. And talking about the proactive problem, this is a process which aims to arrest issues or arrest the problems before they can impact the business very much. So there can be some underlying symptoms which have not yet impacted the business, but the goal of the proactive problem management is to make sure we detect them proactively, we put enhanced monitoring in place, and we gather the data in a proactive manner to make sure we make some changes in the environment and make sure we stop the issues before they can happen. And talking about the source of a problem ticket in BCBSRE environment, we have initiated an exercise named Management by Facts by HCL team, and we have agreed with IT operations team that there are 2 types of situations where a proactive problem ticket is going to be created. The first one is going to be for analyzing the alerts, the top 10 servers which are creating maximum alerts in a monthly manner. So we are going to pick the top 10 servers which are creating alerts, frequent alerts in a monthly manner, and we are going to find out why those alerts are triggered. So we hope these alerts will give us some important information that have not converted to an incident yet. So we are going to use those alerts information to make sure we understand the system that is triggering the alert better, and we make some modifications so it is not creating any incidents. So that's one of a situation. And the other situation is to understand the top 5 CIs that are triggering many incidents in a monthly manner. We are going to pick those top 5 CIs in a proactive manner and we are going to understand why those CIs are triggering incidents in a repetitive manner. So those two situations are going to be created as a proactive problem in BCBSR environment. And as we move across, or as the process matures, we will be implementing more policies for proactive problem analysis. Some of them can be like taking a CI which is creating multiple emergency changes, and so on and so forth. So the solutions, talking about the solutions for arresting a proactive problem management is to respond quickly to the alerts that we are taking for analysis, and tracking the corrective measures until it is properly implemented in the system. So those are the 2 pointers I wanted to talk about, the different types of problem management. Do anyone have any questions so far? Or do anyone like to share any other kind of information that we need to discuss here related to these topics?
Logesh, Rohitash, for this reactive problem management, what is the timeline for RCA submission?
Yes, so we have those information in the coming slides, Rohitash. Yeah, thanks for calling that out. I have put in a slide that will talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or points to discuss?
No, I am fine.
Thank you. So moving on to the problem management policies. So these are all some of the basic criteria for which the problem management is based upon, and there should be no deviation from this. So I like to call out the policies one by one, and I like to talk about them a little bit, so there are no ambiguities after we complete this slide. So the first pointer in the problem management policy talks about who can create the problem ticket. So in BCBSR, problem manager is the person who can be contacted for creating any problem and problem tickets, because it is important that we have to understand if the investigation efforts really calls for that much level of participation from the teams, and the pain value of the business impact it carries. So the basic policy is the problem manager should be creating the problem ticket after qualifying the pain value of the incident or the number of incidents that are reported. And talking about the fourth point, the problem investigation team can be comprised of members from same or different support teams. And talking about the fifth point, the problem resources will be shared with other processes. So, for example, if a problem is calling for a change to be implemented from Cognizant, they can be an investigation lead. However, there are some other teams that have to implement some changes who cannot be in a better position to give the RC document. However, there will be some level of support expected of them to make sure the problem is effectively handled. Say, for example, we have an ongoing problem now where we are experiencing slowness in most of the Salesforce and application environment. So though we assume that it is all caused due to some kind of contention in the environment, we do have some level of support required from Cognizant and the entity teams to give their inputs to it. So in those cases, the resources will be shared with different processes, and the person who is implementing the final solution can be the investigation lead for the RCA. Okay. So talking about the sixth point, the incident resolution owner may develop a workaround separately within an incident process. However, before that can be considered as a proper workaround or a proper corrective action, it has to be reviewed with the proper technical support teams and problem managers before we can input that as workaround for that. Talking about the 7th and 8th points, if there is any open problem under investigation, and if we continue to see any repeated incidents related to the symptom, it is important and it is expected that the problem number have to be linked to the incident ticket. So likewise, if there is any incident that is related to the ongoing problem, the incident number should be in turn related to the problem ticket. So that will be taken care by the problem manager as well as the investigation lead assigned for the problem ticket. So by that way, we will be able to track if this is a known issue in the environment or if it is something not paid attention, etc. So talking about the last point, a problem ticket can be created given the business impact in the situation. However, it may turn out that we don't have proper evidence to perform the root cause analysis. So during those times, we can see if the problem reoccurs, and if it doesn't reoccur, we can withdraw the investigation or cancel the problem ticket, and we should be proposing some other effective troubleshooting process before it can happen again. So the 9th point talks about when a problem ticket can be cancelled or withdrawn. So I'd like to give a few minutes for everyone to read through this slide and let me know if there are any questions on this slide.
So, Logesh, whom do we define as a problem manager?
Okay, so for BCBSRI, I'm the problem manager, a person who coordinates until the RCA is submitted and preventive actions are taken care of is called as a problem manager. And the person who is going to help the problem manager with the RCA document and the steps to implement the preventive actions will be called as investigation leads for that.
So can we take one example? Basically, like we have several situations, correct? So just take any one example, like who can be a problem manager. We know basically investigation lead is somebody who is coordinating that effort, basically. So is it like something like business owner from that application point of view, or maybe like if it is infrastructure side, then like who is heading the infrastructure from Blue Cross side? So
Correct. So those people are called problem leads who can provide their level of expertise. They can provide their knowledge on how to handle the problem. So basically, the problem manager is a person who is tasked to track the activities in a timely manner and review the RCA document submitted for completeness to make sure all the areas of the problem process is completed. For example, a problem lead, investigation lead can submit a kind of a draft RCA document with his initial observation. However, it is the problem manager's responsibility to make sure they follow the right technique of RCA process, which I will be talking about in further slides to come. So the problem manager have to ensure that there are no gaps or there are no action items left in implementing the preventive action. So that's why we have different levels of techniques or different types of techniques for performing the analysis. And we'll be taking the 5-way analysis as an example for this investigation. Say, for example, if there is a slowness, let's take, for example, the slowness of this environment currently ongoing. So, the SOA team can say like, I have enabled the problem dump and I'm going to monitor it. But it is the responsibility of the problem manager to make sure that entry is updated in the knowledge base, and it is also updated in the problem record. And when there is a repeated incident, it is expected of the investigation lead as well as the problem manager to call out what is the action taken in the previous incident. So thereby, we will be able to correlate the actions taken in the previous incident, and we will be able to make better decisions to handle another critical incidents that is reported.
So, like you took this example basically, slowness in SOA area. So, like, who will be the problem manager and opening the problem record?
Yes, it has been open. The problem record has been open, and yeah, that would be me, myself, and in case of my absence, Deepa will also be driving it. And it is important that the problem record is updated with all the necessary facts gathered during the incident, and we also have an immediate workaround that can be applied.
Okay.
Okay. So do anyone have any other questions on this problem management policy?
So just to add on,
Rutash,
like from BCBSRI side and HCL side, like Logesh will be the problem manager from a holistic view, that all the problem records which are getting generated. So Logesh will be the problem manager, and he'll be coordinating with the different vendors depending upon the investigation leads that have been assigned for that particular problem record. So for an example, if the priority incident has been resolved by Cognizant, for an example, right? And they have assigned the problem investigation lead. So Logesh will be the point of contact, or Spock, to coordinate, to take care of all the actions which are pertaining to the problem records, as well as the RCA documentation, including the corrective and the preventive actions. So he will be the point of contact, to coordinate and mark out the progress which is required in order to have the process aligned and makes it standardized as well.
Yes, thanks for pitching in to that. Okay, so Rohitash, did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, I am fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so hope there are no further questions, or probably if there are still questions, you can call out at the end. Okay, so I'd like to talk a few things about the known error database. So it is equally important to the RCA submission. So a known error is nothing but a corrective action item, or can be also be a workaround that needs to be entered in the problem record as soon as it is created. Because until the permanent fix is going to be investigated and applied, we are going to use the known error or the workaround to as a kind of band-aid for any incident that can be reported in the due course of investigation. So it is important that the workaround or the temporary corrective action item have to be communicated to the problem manager quickly. And to talk about the quality of the known error, it is important that we have to mention the proper symptom that is noticed during the incident in the known error database. For example, people can report that the facets is not working. So that is not a symptom. So the symptom should be like, what is the error message the users are seeing that will give us a hint of what we should be looking into. Say, for example, people can be seeing a 404 page cannot be displayed, or they can even see the page is not available, something like that. So that symptom is going to give us some hint about what is the area we have to look into, whether it is an application issue or if it is a kind of network issue, stuff like that. So it is important that the symptoms is also captured by the investigation lead when he submits the draft of the RCA document. And talking about the known error database, I like to put some emphasis on the fifth pointer there. So there are times when during a release testing, there is a possibility some minor errors remains unrectified due to the time-bound deployment of the project. So these errors or possible errors should be logged in as a known error in the database so that the workaround can be used when the deployment goes into the live production environment. And a formal step in the testing sign-off should also be updated so that it makes its entry into the knowledge base. Okay. So those are the pointers which I want to talk about the overall policy and the expected response for a known error database. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. This slide talks about the holistic overview of the overall configuration in the ITSM system, which is the ServiceNow system. So there are different stages involved like draft, review, under investigation, resolved, and closed. And I'm going to talk about this in detail in the next slide. So before I can move on, I like to call out that there are two aspects to a problem management process. The first one is the problem control, which talks about qualifying a problem ticket. We don't take all the incidents as a problem. So we have to qualify if it is going to impact a wider audience, if it is causing a huge pain for the business, etc. So those kind of information should be collected during the problem control process. And identifying the proper investigation lead and the team is going to be under the problem control process. And talking about the error control is about the data provided by the investigation lead, which documents the resolution identified, the workaround identified, and also the permanent solution identified during the error control process. And not last but not the least, the overall information collected, the workaround, permanent actions, and any lessons learned, all of them are going to make its entry into the knowledge base or the known error database. Okay. So I'm moving on to explain the in-depth workflow of the problem management process in the ServiceNow. So as you can see, there are 5 levels of workflow defined in the ServiceNow system. So I'd like to talk about the first pointer, which is the stage called identification stage. So in BCSRA, the problem ticket is created for all the P1 incidents and for customer requested P2 incidents, and for the proactive problem management exercise, which is agreed with the IT operations team. So this phase is called an identification phase. So moving on to the second stage, this is a stage we call it as problem investigation or under review, where we qualify if the problem really qualifies for investigation, and we prioritize it, and we categorize if it is an application or a hardware issue, etc. So this is a stage where the investigation lead is going to be obtained, and the problem manager is going to assign the lead to the ticket, and a first notification will be sent to the problem lead to submit the RCA within a timeline that is mentioned in the notification. So moving on to the third stage. Now this is a stage we call it as review and approval. So in this stage, the RCA investigation lead is supposed to be submitting the RCA within the timeline, and it's going to be reviewed by the problem manager for completeness. If it is complete with proper workaround and solutions identified, it is going to be shared with the IT operations team. And if the RCA document is not complete, it's going to be referred back to the investigation lead to complete the information. So moving on to the fourth stage, this is a stage called as remediation, where the corrective actions and preventive actions are defined, and we set the proper timelines for completing that. We raise change tickets and we get approval for RSS implementation, etc. And we implement the preventive and corrective actions. So this is a stage called remediation stage. So all through these four stages, we have a kind of bi-weekly cadence called a bi-weekly open RCA meeting, which happens every Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the morning, or in a bi-weekly manner. So the investigation leads and the teams are expected to join the bi-weekly call, and they are expected to share the status updates on the investigation under progress. And the fifth stage is called as a closure stage, where the preventive action status is assessed for its effectiveness. We are going to monitor if the preventive action is causing further issues or not, and we are going to see if the problem is completely arrested or if the incidents are completely arrested. And at this stage, we will be closing the problem record if there are no further incidents. However, if there is a situation where we don't get sufficient evidence, or we don't see that the efforts are not required, we can either withdraw the investigation or it can be disqualified or cancelled. So this is all about the 5 stages in the ServiceNow system. Do anyone have any questions or any points to discuss?
So Logesh, this is Peter. I may have missed this, but I went back in the slides and I see that a point that was brought up regarding RCA submission timelines. So there
Correct,
are
Peter.
delays, but their technical teams have to adhere to. What is in the second box to the right? It says that the problem manager notifies investigation lead via email about the due date to submit the RCA.
So correct, Peter. So what is going to happen is, I've been doing this whenever I create a problem ticket. So I will be writing an email to the investigation lead, and I will be mentioning the time when the RCA document has to be submitted. So ideally, what we have agreed in the past was to give 10 working days for non-HCL teams like Carousel, Cognizant, and NTT. And we give 5 working days for HCL teams to submit the RCA document. So I will be writing an email whenever I open a problem ticket, and I will be mentioning the time when the RCA have to be ready.
However, does the lead have the ability, based on the complexity of the problem, to change that date, that timeline?
Of course, yes, Peter. So that is also captured in the further slides. So they can very well write to you or Terry explaining why it is taking more time. And if you're comfortable, you can give them approval to extend the RCA submission.
So Logesh, do you want to go to that slide? I know it's 2 slides forward from this one, but it might be a good time to just skip forward to that slide and just review it.
Sure, Terry. I'll just skip to it. Okay. So this is a slide which talks about the RCA submission timelines. So I have put in 2 tables here, one for HCL and one for non-HCL owned RCAs. And the first column in the table talks about the activity or the expected outcome of the activity. The second column talks about the timeline when the action has to be taken. And the third and the other columns talks about the different stakeholders involved in the process. So I like to call out the HCL owned RCA timelines. So as soon as a P1 or a P2 customer requested P2 is created, a problem record is going to be created for 24 hours, and the problem manager or me will be sending an email to the investigation lead to submit the RCA within 5 working days. So it is not calendar days, it is 5 working days. So I will be waiting to see if there are any RCA documents or any inputs given by the lead. And if there are no response, I will be sending another notification on the 3rd working day. Excuse me. So on the 3rd working day, I'm going to send the lead to give him a kind of reminder to get an exceptional approval from client if they are not able to submit the RCA. So this point is going to be the trigger point where they will be reaching out to you or Peter, Terry. So the 3rd working day will be the day when the HCL lead is going to be talking to you if they need more timelines to submit RCA. And again, on start of the 5th working day, another reminder will be sent by the problem manager if there are no information given on 3rd working day. And if it still misses, we will be starting the escalation process. So there will be 3 escalation notifications sent to different levels of leads identified, which is mentioned at the bottom of the slide here. And this has been agreed with the IT operations team and the other stakeholders. So for a HCL-owned RCA, the first escalation will start on the 6th working day. The second escalation will be sent on the start of the business on 7th working day. Likewise, the 3rd escalation will be sent on 8th working day. And it is expected that the RCA has to be submitted at least by 8th working day, if at all it's going to be escalated. And from then, we are going to take, the problem manager is going to take a maximum of 2 working days to review the document for completeness, and it will be shared with the IT operations team when the document is complete. So this is about HCL owned RCAs. Talking about the non-HCL owned RCA. So the problem ticket is going to be created as soon as P1 incident is resolved within the 24 hours of resolving the P1 incident. And I will be sending out an email to the investigation lead with the date from the time when the incident is resolved. And it is expected that they are supposed to be sending the RCA document within 10 working days. So if there are no updates till 7 working days, I will be sending out another email on 7th working day, notifying them to contact the IT ops approval to seek exceptional approval. And again, I will be sending an email on 10th working day if there are no response received.
So just to take a second on, it's not that, HCL and the non-HCL are different intentionally, but they're based on contractual SLAs that are different in the different contracts. So again, this slide indicates that, and we had to come up with timelines that actually match the current contractual arrangements with all the different vendors. So again, it's not intentional that we wanted to do this, but in hindsight, you look at the contracts and you have to adjust the escalations and the notifications to actually match what's in the contracts. We're actually looking at trying to unify the timelines for everyone, HCL and NTT, Cognizant, Carousel, to be the same, which this hopefully in the future will be one escalation and one format, if you will, that we can all follow. But contractually right now, that's just not what we're able to do.
Thank you, Terry. So Terry, are you comfortable that we set this expectation as 10 working days?
Yep. So again, based on the contracts in place currently, this is what we had to come up with.
Thank you, Terry. So I understand it is still work under review. And Okay, so if that is the process, I would request the teams to reach out to Terry and Peter if you feel you need more time to submit the RCA, and we can get it documented. So I'm not following up with you very often. Okay. So to conclude, the overall expectation from the teams is to keep the problem manager, which is me and Deepa, informed of when the RCA can be submitted and the reason for the same. Okay, so the table at the bottom talks about the different levels of escalation points who will be reached out for asking the RCA document. And I understand this is still being reviewed. If there are no further questions, we can move forward.
Not just not a question, just a statement. All you're looking for is for a response is confirmation that the email has been received and is accepted.
Well, it's just not the email, Peter. So when we say like the problem is being investigated, we are dealing with an open risk. So we need to have a proper information on how much efforts have been put and how long it's going to take the preventive action. So yeah, like you said, as long as the problem manager is informed of what is the investigation efforts being put and the timelines taken, uh, that will be sufficient to assess how long the risk is going to be open.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So this is a slide to talk about what is the root cause and what a root cause analysis document is supposed to contain. So like we discussed earlier, a root cause is the underlying root object, an action or a circumstance that resulted in the incident or the problem investigation. And the root cause analysis is a process aimed at finding the fundamental reasons why a problem has occurred, communicating those details with the customer facing document that often has a wide and varied audience. So I put in a small table of what an RC document should contain. So the first pointer is the chronology of events until resolution. Now the reason why we are putting importance or giving importance for the chronology of events is because at some point it's going to help us understand how soon the teams reacted to a critical incident process and what are the tools that we need to make sure we respond quickly during a critical incident. So this chronology is going to help us with those information. I hope everyone agrees with me. Okay, so this is one of an important aspect to see how quickly the teams responded, how soon the data was available during a critical incident, and we review them and we make better decisions to make it more effective and efficient next time. So talking about the second point, the facts and reason why the problem happened, it is going to be documented in the RCA document. The facts and reasons can be like whether a change was caused or a change resulted in an incident, or if there are monitoring in place that could have captured the incident in advance, etc. So those are the facts that needs to be captured. And talking about the 5-way analysis, it is one of best practice, or I would say a technique of finding the root cause of critical incidents. So basically, it is a kind of a breakdown of the events that occurred in the critical incident management in the form of 5 questions. It can also go beyond 5 questions, but those questions are going to help us narrow down to the root cause of an issue. And the fourth point is about the corrective and preventive action items, whereas we find the root cause and we tell them what is the immediate corrective action item and what is the long-term preventive action item that can be placed to fix those issues. So often there will be people who will be asking what is the difference between a corrective and preventive action item. Uh, I would say like any follow-up actions, immediate follow-up actions that is required to address the issue can be called as a corrective action. For example, if a server is crashed, we can say that rebooting the server or adding additional memory to a server can be a corrective action item. Preventive can be like thinking about long-term actions such as having another redundant server online that can take over the load, or implementing some enhanced monitorings to make sure we get proper alerts before even the server can be crashed. So those kind of pointers can be a long-term preventive action items. Okay, so do anyone have any questions on the pointers in this slide before I can move on? Okay, moving on to the next slide. This one talks about how to do or how to fill in an RCA document. And I have given some examples on the right side. So the first RCA document is given by the entity. So like I mentioned, the five-way analysis is a technique used to find the root cause, and it goes about breaking down the problem issue into different questions so we can narrow down. So in this example, I like to take the entity data given here. In this example, I will put in the first question as the issue. So the problem was duplicates DCNs were being generated for old documents prior to the MESIS upgrade. That comes as a first question here, and the investigation lead is expected to give the answer for it. So here the answer says because one of the formworks table did not refresh with the old formworks database. So now this one goes why one of the formworks table did not refresh with old formworks database. And the lead is expected to give an answer here. And again, this one goes as a third question, like why the FIS told it's not necessary for formworks table to refresh with old formworks. And we break down that answer here. So it is important that we come up with as much as information possible so that we will be able to narrow down to the precise root cause. So it is very important that the RCA lead, the person who is supposed to be giving the RCA should document complete information in order to have a better documentation and effective RCA process. So this loop goes on until we come to a point where we cannot ask further questions. So that's when we call it as the root cause is completed, and we should be able to have a proper root cause that we need to work on finding the action items for that. Right, so I have put in an example of a carousel problem ticket here. And there is a head sale problem record in the next slide. So like I said, the first question should be the actual problem or the actual issue that we are going to investigate. So here it says why the BPO team could not process the claims. The answer is the files were not sent to the TRIZO2 and they were unable to see the loaded to the facets. And this one comes as a second question here. Why the files were not sent to TRIZO2? And we find an answer that the process related to enable the datasets were impacted. And this comes as a next question. So this is one of an easiest technique, but again, it depends on the response given by or the details given by the investigation lead in the documentation. So I would request the forum to take this message that the RCA document should be having all the essential information to perform this analysis. Okay. If there are no further questions, we can move on to the next slide, which talks about the different fields to be filled in an RCA document. So do anyone have any questions on the 5 why analysis technique? Okay, so in this slide, I'd like to talk about the general problem information and the related fields in the RCA document. So most of the times I could see there are problem tickets submitted with different formatting, and it is important that the format should be uniform across the complete documentation so that it is easy to understand. So to name out a few fields here, the problem number should contain the actual ServiceNow problem number. The title should be the problem we are talking about. It need not be the symptom that is noticed during an incident. For example, Salesforce slowness can be a better title when compared to uh, Salesforce hanging or Salesforce throwing some exception error, something like that. So we need to have a suitable title for it. And it is important that the business impact should also be captured. So again, business impact is something that should be the end user experience. I have called out some of the examples here. The current example can be like response SLA was impacted. So this one is an appropriate business impact, whereas the Salesforce IO error is not a business impact. So it is expected that the investigation lead is going to capture all this information in the RC document. And it is important that we capture all the applications impacted, so we know the real pain of the problem that has happened, and we can accordingly implement some strict measures to make sure this does not happen again. And related incidents, it is important that one or many incidents that are related to the problem should be in the RCA record. It need not be many, but at least we need to call out a couple of incidents which have occurred related to the problem. And talking about the date formatting, so what we emphasize or what will be the good practice for an RCA document is mentioned here. It is always good if you mention like 18-May 20 instead of 5/18, so there are no confusion between the month and the date. Okay, and talking about the duration, often we see that there are documents which contain the time difference between the incident when it is reported and when it is resolved in the ServiceNow system. However, the best practice would be to capture the actual time resolved, which can be taken from the CIM notification. So this one will be a better fact or a better evidence to find out how long the outage was persisting. Okay, so I'm giving some emphasis on the duration here because an incident can be resolved within a couple of hours. However, it may wait in the ServiceNow system for user feedback that may take a day or two. And we should not be calling out the outage persisted for 2 days. It should actually be 2 hours. So I would need the investigation lead to make a note of this, that the duration should be the actual time when the incident started and when it is resolved during the CIM process. And to help you with this, I would say like if someone can refer the CIM notification sent out, you will be able to gather most of the information from the notification, like what was the symptom the issue was throwing to the user, what was the business impact, what time the issue started, and when was the time when it was actually resolved, etc. So the CIM notification can be better used to fill in some of the main sections of this RCA document. So do anyone have any questions on these fields? Okay, moving on to the next slide. This slide talks about the chronology of activity, which is again can be gathered from the CIM notification. So one of the important field here is the incident description. It would be a good practice if we kind of use this format. So we give a little background of when or the date when it started, what was the location impacted, and how many users impacted in the incident description. Okay. Again, we have the same date and time formatting here, and it will be good to have this format as mentioned here. Okay. And talking about the presumptive cause, the presumptive cause is something that we all thought it could be related to in the beginning. So it can be the first root cause we thought it could be that can be captured here. However, the actual root cause can be something different, which can be captured in the later section of the documents. So the next part talks about the 5-way analysis. And I have attached a checklist that the investigation lead can use this. So this one is going to be used for filling the RCA document, and at the same time, it is also going to be used for audit purposes. So I like to open it and so I can show you the fields mentioned here. So I would request the investigation leads to start filling this checklist, or to make use of this checklist before they can share the completed RCA document with me and the IT operations team, so it looks complete and effective. So like I said, this one is also going to be an audit sheet for assessing the level of or the quality of the RCA documents being submitted. Okay. All right, so moving on to the next slide. This one talks about some of the specific background questions, which are essential for identifying why the problem has happened. The questions are like whether the failed component has been monitored, whether the problem or incident happened due to a change, whether it is due to our old hardware in the environment, or if it is repeated nature, etc. So these are some of the important information that are mentioned in the RC document for completeness. Right. So talking about this summary, a summary can be uh, a summary of the 5-way analysis we already completed. So if the 5-way analysis is going to be thorough and proper, we can put them in a one-liner or a kind of paragraph mentioning what was the action taken, and we can call it out as a summary of the analysis. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. This page talks about the details of the workarounds identified. And the root cause and the preventive measures. And as you can see, all these fields are self-explanatory. And it is important that all these fields have to be filled in here. For example, the corrective action item field has the action owner name, the team and the action owner name, and it's going to document the service manager name. If it is going to be entity, it's going to have ARPIT's name here. Likewise, we are going to capture how it was delivered and the corrective action item has been implemented. So if there was any project raised, that project number or the name can be given here. And the due date can also be mentioned here, which will be essential to close the problem record. So all these fields are going to help us in understanding how soon the investigation lead responded and how soon the investigation team reacted to the problem or reacted to finding the better solution for it in a timely manner, etc. So I would say it is important that we need to, the investigation lead have to be quick in responding and providing timely and complete information. Okay. So the reason why we emphasize on timely and complete information is because until we close the problem cycle, there is some risk that is going to be open in the environment that is going to create more incidents or adverse impacts. So we need to target closing the problem cycle by implementing the preventive action items in a timely manner. And I hope everyone would appreciate that. So do anyone have any questions on the RCA documentation process? Any clarifications or any feedback that you have come across while filling the RCA document? Okay. All right. I hope that there are no further questions in filling the RCA document. Now, coming to this slide, last but not the least, we have something called lessons learned at the end of the RCA document. I pointed out here in the section 6.4. Now, the lessons learned are something that may not be visible when the incident happened, but were revealed when we started investigating it. So I will give some examples here. So we had some incidents in the past where we found out that there was an alerting mechanism in place.
So, guess, are we losing you?
Yeah, I believe Logesh has dropped off from the meeting. We'll just wait for him to join in. I'll quickly check with him. Please allow a minute for me to check.
Hi, Logesh again. Can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, Logesh, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I got disconnected from my phone.
No issues, no issues. You can proceed, Logesh.
Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so this slide talks about the examples of lessons learned. So I put in some pointers here. Like the first one is about adding some members to the alert distribution list, so the right parties are involved. Right parties are notified. And the second point talks about an alert that was assigned to a different team when it is actually supposed to have been coming to the correct team. This is one of our lessons that we have learned. And there were scenarios where the testing was done before a release was deployed, where there were misconfigurations, like test environment did not have the volume of production environment, which caused the impact. And there is one more example where a certificate was not necessary, which was in place, that was stopping some TCP relays. And after we removed it, it resolved the problem. So those were some of the underlying issues which might have been prevailing in the system, but were not visible until we realized it through a major incident. So those kind of extra observations or kind of additional information that are gathered during the problem process. So if we can mention them, it will be very encouraging for for tracking it to a closure. And we also have put in a Excel sheet, a spreadsheet. It's going to capture the lessons learned. This will be used to share with the IT operations team of how effectively we have performed the root cause analysis and what were our observations were.
Yep, and just to add on, right, so this tracker will also help us to, look forward for the past cases that we have received as well. Like, this will be one repository from where you can, refer the previous incident, right? That what was the incident that caused this problem and what actions did we take, right? So this repository will be one-stop destination for all the technical teams, right? In order to look into the things that they have already performed upon and what was the actions they took in order to resolve that problem as well. So this will with this particular lesson learned tracker will be implemented post this session, and whatever problem records or the priority incidents that will be coming into BCBSR environment, that will be captured in this fashion going forward.
That is right. Thank you, Siddharth. So moving on to the last slide. So I have attached some of the reference material for best practices in handling an effective RCA. And I have also given a sample RCA template, which can be used by the investigation leads or from this forum.
Yeah. So Logesh, can you just open, some of the best practices so that, the forum can look into the things, that they can refer while, developing the RCA document as well. So that, these are some of the handy documents that the team can refer to, and, accordingly they can fill the RCA template so that it is standardized across all the vendors. Because, this is one document that goes out to the senior leadership from all the entities, may it be Corosal, may it be Cognizant, may it be HCL, and even BCBSRI point of view as well. So this is one document that we should try to make it as standard as we can, so that there is no rework done and there is no to and fro between the teams in order to capture the best possible details. So Lokesh, I would just request you can just open the best practices document as well as just to walk them through that to get the idea how to fill in what are the best practices as well.
Sure, Siddharth. Thanks for calling that out. I'm going to share the best practice as well. I'm sharing my screen with everyone once again. So what I did was I have embedded the best practice document as a kind of supplement at the last page of the RCA document. And this RCA document will be shared for all the investigation lead or with the investigation leads going forward. Okay, so these are some of the best practices in filling an RCA document. All sections of the template need to be filled up appropriately, and it should be all in past tense. Whatever the statement that we are putting in the RCA document should be all in past tense, because it is no longer an issue. The sentences should be made simple as possible with less technical jargons. Important actions should be called out. There should be no grammatical mistakes, and so on and so forth. So I would request the forum to make use of the attachment in today's session and make use of the FAQs and the best practices attached to the slide number 18. Okay. So with that, that brings to the closure of this. Now, I'd like to give some time for the forum to think back and let me know if you have any questions or any comments to add.
Okay, so Lokesh, it was a good session for the teams, to understand the overall process, that we are adhering in the BCBSR environment, as well as some of the key aspects that the vendors needs to keep in mind, while doing the RCA documentation, as well as adhering to the contractual timelines that has been agreed. So overall, it was a good session, and I'll just seek any inputs as well from the other vendors and some of the key stakeholders, as well as Terry, if you want to just highlight some of the pointers over here, it will be really appreciated.
So just a general comment that the documents and the presentation and the training today are part of a larger program, meaning a management by fact program. It's undertaken by the Center of Excellence division of HCL to assess the current processes that we have here at Blue Cross, make some recommendations, work with the tower leads and the individuals involved to improve the process. So again, the training today is part of that, to make sure that the information is presented, is available. A forum is there for questions or just comments and discussion. So thanks Logesh and Siddharth for the presentation, the information, and an understanding of what the process is and some of the changes that are actually being implemented here at Blue Cross.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Terry. And just to highlight as well to the forum, right? Like this will be like an ongoing activity going forward. That we'll be having these training sessions in a periodic fashion, like maybe half yearly, and we'll be apprising you to all the inputs and the challenges that has been highlighted by multiple tracks, so that we collaboratively work in order to have a smooth process running for BCBSRI. As well. Okay. Yeah, Lokesh, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so like we discussed, it is important that the investigation lead assigned to a problem ticket have to adhere to the RCA submission time as best as possible. And in case of any challenges or any delays caused by a vendor response, something like that, please write to Terry and Peter and copy me, mentioning the time when the RCA can be submitted. So we all know that you are working on finding the root cause of it, and the efforts you have put in finding the details for that. So we also have a call on a bi-weekly manner on all Wednesdays. On Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and we encourage you to join the call if you feel to convey any message or any feedback to the forum. So that gets noted in the meeting. So other than that, do anyone have any questions or clarifications? I see most of the entity folks who are responsible to submit RCA documents have participated, and we also see the HCL team leads who are responsible to submit RCAs have participated. And I look forward to set up one more session with some additional people who have missed this training. I got feedback from Arpit that there are a different set of stakeholders who need to take this material. So I will check with Arpit on their availability, and I will set up another meeting in the future.
So, Logesh, Rohitash.
Yes, please go ahead, Rohitash.
One question on this non-error database, basically, where like one of the point was like that entry will be created in that database basically by testing team. So did you organize similar kind of session for testing team also, so that they know basically?
I remember not, Rohitash, but it will be good if you can, share their names or the distribution list, and I will be setting up another session with him quickly.
Okay. Okay, I will let Arpit know basically because he is giving you for some other folks also, correct? So collectively he can give for everybody.
Correct. So we had a session on how to create knowledge articles. Probably I can put in a slide on kind of 1 or 2 slider on how to create them as well. So they know how to create KB articles that can be effectively used.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by the forum? So Peter and Terry, yeah, I noticed that you gave some feedbacks on the content. So do you like to provide any other additional comments on improving the training material in future?
No. Fine, Eric, just like make the comment offline.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
All right. So if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the call today. Hope this was useful. And if you still have any questions, please feel to reach out to me or Deepa if you have any questions. All right. Thanks for your time today, and wish you all have a good day and a good afternoon. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Lokesh.
You're welcome, Siddharth. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lokesh. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lokesh.